The number of days that the VIX finished above 20 between January of 2020 and 2025 is over 500. That's because of COVID. That's because of the Russia-Ukraine war. That's because of the economic uncertainty that was occurring during that time. When those macro shocks happen, investors and professionals of all stripes are trying to understand these very, very complex topics and what they mean either for their portfolios or for their business. And so we've seen a real spike in demand for our services, our insights.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of The Blunt Dollar. Today's guest is Eric Jaffe, the Chief Executive Officer at BCA Research, one of the most respected and longest standing macro research firms in the world.
When you're an investor, obviously you're looking for the edge, you're looking for alpha. I've created a red team at BCA to actually come together and think through. Your mandate is, how would you disrupt BCA with AI? So we want to make sure we're thinking about that, at the same time, trying to be aware of what might be out there. It will allow us to make sure that we're just using AI more effectively and delivering better, solutions to our clients.
This is The Blunt Dollar with Ignacio Ramirez. Quick disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and do not constitute financial investment or legal advice. This content is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a substitute for professional advice. Always do your own research and consult a qualified advisor before making any financial decisions. All investments involve risk, including the potential loss of capital. And now, let's get started with the episode. Welcome everyone to a new episode of The Blunt Dollar. Today's guest is Eric Jaffe, the Chief Executive Officer at BCA Research, one of the most respected and longest-standing macro research firms in the world. Since taking the reins in late 2023, Eric has been steering BCA into its next phase, building on a legacy of 75 years of independent, data-driven macro insights. Eric's path to the top of BCA isn't your typical Wall Street climb. He spent more than a decade in leadership at GLG, where he helped scale one of the most influential expert networks in finance. Before that, he started his career in Washington, serving as a foreign affairs specialist in the U.S. Department of Defense. Add to that degrees from Cornell and Johns Hopkins, SIIS, and you start to get a picture of someone who sees markets through a global systems-level lens. In this conversation, we get into why Eric believes macro matters more than ever, what he sees changing in the way investors consume research, and how he's thinking about the role of AI and internal debate in shaping the future of financial insights. Eric, I'm super excited to have you on the show. Welcome to The Blunt Dollar.
Ignacio, it's an honor to be here. Super excited as well.
So I always like to start the conversation asking my guests, in their own words, what is it that you're doing exactly today as the CEO of BCA Research?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was hired in November of 2023, and BCA had recently, about a year before that, been acquired by a private equity firm who I was hired by. And the premise was, this is an incredible company. It's been around at that time for 74, 75 years. We need a next phase of growth. It had built up such an amazing reputation. And so that's what I've been focused on for the last 19, 20 months that I've been in the seat, is modernizing BCA and harnessing the incredible insights that the company produces and trying to restore growth, which we've done.
I think pretty much all of our listeners probably know what BCA Research is doing. But if you don't, just Google it, BCA Research, I can say hands down is one of the best research houses out there. Plenty of interesting insights, particularly from a macro perspective. Do you want to maybe tell a little bit more about what is it that you guys are doing exactly?
Definitely. So we are the largest independent provider of global macro investment research in the world. We've been around now for 76 years. And essentially, we provide insights. We write research. We talk in the media, on social media. You can, follow us on Twitter and on LinkedIn. I recommend doing so. And so we help our clients understand what's going on in the world with an investment lens on it. And so we've been doing that for a very long time. Our mission is to be the essential source of macro insight for the world's top professionals.
Mhm. So let me tell you something. The first time I read BCA research, not the first time, but let's say one of the first papers I read from you guys, and that is definitely one of my favorite pieces, is one that was written, I believe it was by Peter Berezin.
Bearson, is it about
Yeah.
the metaverse?
No, the one about nuclear conflict, what to do in
Ah,
case, there's a nuclear war escalation and there's a real probability that the world is going to blow up, like literally the whole thing. And I think the paper went along the lines of just go long, because if there's a war and we all die, well, your portfolio won't matter anymore. And if I mean, in the case the market is correcting, he meant it. And if there's no war in the end, and markets recover, well, you want to be as long as possible, because you're going to take advantage of that bull market. So I thought it
so
was
our
very
research is
interesting.
clearly we're very upbeat all the time, right?
But yeah,
But
that's it.
we take a lot of pride in thinking differently, and so a lot of people who follow BCA are always hooked because they're like, wow, you guys are contrarian, you're anti-consensus, you're choosing topics to think about and write about that I never would have expected, and
Mm,
on the common topics, you just think differently, and that's part of BCA's DNA and ethos. And so that's often the case, that when someone tells me, "Oh yeah, I noticed BCA because of this story, or this thing that you wrote, or this thing I heard you saying," and then they kind of stay hooked from there.
yeah, I wonder if you can even have a research house, an independent research house nowadays, without being contrarian in some way. Because if you're just consensual on saying what everyone else is saying all the time, then most likely clients are not going to be willing to pay for what you're producing, right?
Well, you'd be surprised. I do think that there's some value in being, thinking consensus. And here's what I mean by that. When I was growing up, I started my kind of professional life in Washington D.C., as you had mentioned, and I was like a news junkie. I
Hmm.
still am, and I was reading the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the FT, and then I was reading all these publications: the New Republic, the Weekly Standard, the National Review, living in DC and just kind of imbibing everything that DC had to offer. And what I started to realize was that those newspapers were really important in the sense that they sort of provided the conventional wisdom for every policymakers or the broad DC community. And then those magazines, at least at that time, obviously the world of opinion has changed and evolved dramatically. Those magazines were the non-consensus thinkers. They were the ones who were contrarian. The New Republic famously kind of mastered the art of writing a headline that would take the conventional wisdom and turn it on its head as a way of kind of drawing you in. And so I sort of think about BCA as playing that same role.
Hmm.
uh, the with no disrespect intended, I won't even mention the institutions, but there are some institutions I think that do more conventional wisdom thinking, and that's okay. Like that kind of gets the framework into some of our clients' heads. But then you need to go deeper, and you need to challenge those frameworks, and that's the role that BCA plays. And when you're an investor, obviously you're looking for the edge, you're looking for alpha, and so you simply can't afford to only imbibe the conventional wisdom. You have to challenge yourself, and BCA I think plays that role.
Yeah, personally, what I'm always after when I'm reading research is finding those gold nuggets, those little parts of the narrative that maybe you didn't think about, but that really make you look at the whole thing from a different angle. And no matter if it's aligned or against your thesis, I think it's what I need is someone that goes a little bit deeper or through a different perspective than what I had in mind. And I think for that, BCA research is absolutely top notch, and probably one of the best in the world. So congratulations. And
Well, appreciate the kind words.
no, absolutely, I mean, you guys are crushing it. So we're going to be talking a lot about BCA, but I want to take a step back. I want to hear a little bit about your journey, because obviously you've been in a lot of places. And something that really grabbed my attention while I was researching this episode was that you didn't start your career in finance. You started in Washington, working as a civilian advisor in the Department of Defense, which is a far cry from leading a global macro research house. And I was wondering, how did that experience in foreign affairs shape the way you think about global systems, the world, and more specifically decision making at BCA?
Yeah, I mean, dramatically. So I grew up in a suburban household in New Jersey. My parents were both teachers. My dad was a psychologist and a therapist and an academic. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. I had no exposure to the military really at all. And what ended up happening was during my senior year in college, 9/11 happened.
Hmm.
And I was a government major, and I was just my brain could not process what had just happened. I just um, I tend to be somebody who becomes insatiably curious about different topics, and I just wanted to better understand how something like that could have happened. And so, of course, I was drawn to going to Washington and getting involved in national security and foreign policy and foreign affairs. And I've also always been somebody who's been drawn to um, systems, people, publications that challenge how I think.
Hmm.
And as I mentioned, I grew up in a place where there was no military, and so working at the Pentagon was a very, very different cultural experience for me. And I felt so energized by that. I was confronting perspectives, experiences that were dramatically different from the ones that I had grown up surrounded by. And for me, that's always forced like accelerated learning and growth.
Hmm.
I always try to surround myself by people with people who think differently than me, who challenge me. One of my leadership styles is to not only encourage people on my team to challenge me, but to require them to challenge me. And so yeah, that's kind of how I started in Washington, and it had a dramatic effect on how I think.
And why did you leave the Pentagon? I mean, it sounds terribly exciting.
It was. I think, I was still relatively young and junior in my career when I decided to leave Washington and leave the Pentagon. I think that I sensed that there was a world out there that I wanted to explore beyond Washington and the Pentagon. I didn't, I wouldn't have articulated it that way at the time, but I felt very entrepreneurial, even though, again, I wouldn't have described it that way. I was always meeting people for coffee, trying to better understand what they do. And I also, I think, yearned for the opportunity to advance more quickly than the bureaucracy affords.
Mhm.
And I'm a pretty competitive person, and so I think I was drawn to the private sector because I just had this innate sense that my skills and my interests like could be applied elsewhere. Even though, again, I'm so grateful for the experience that I had in DC. I learned so much working among the military at the Pentagon, and it was just it built an incredible foundation. But yeah, that was kind of what drew me away, and I moved to London and joined GLG in the London office, and again, kind of launched yet another cycle of being in an environment that was very different, and that growth happened in an accelerated manner.
It's super cool to have the Pentagon in your CV. I'll tell you that. It's like secret agent by day, and
No, it
uh,
sounds cool. I mean, it actually was quite cool. I have to say, working at the Pentagon and working among the military, I'm very grateful for it. But it's like a big office building. There's like a barber, there's like food court. It's pretty self-contained. But I was not a secret agent. I promise you that.
I was going to say secret agent by day, finance nerd by night. Uh, so yeah, so you quit the Pentagon and then you went to London. You said, tell us about a bit this finance network GLG, and more importantly, I mean, you spent over a decade over there. Um, there's rumors in the street that you still have a tattoo of GLG in one of your arms. I mean, how was it like scaling the whole machine to where it is today, or where you left it when you left?
No, you only get the tattoo after you hit 20 years at GLG. So,
Ah, okay.
if I'd stuck it out for another 7, I would have it. No, I when I joined GLG in the London office, I began by serving financial services clients. I honestly, if you had pressed me to explain what a asset manager or a hedge fund did, I probably couldn't have made it more than a sentence or two. Like I really was coming in pretty green, um, but I fell in love with the business model, right out of the gate. So GLG is an expert network. It actually created the expert network industry. And the mission is to connect, clients or any professional who needs to learn with an expert
Mhm.
to address their learning need. And it was conceived of as sort of like a learning platform at first. And that was the original mission that the founding CEO started it with. And so I learned a lot about financial services. I learned a lot about operations. Just I learned a lot about client service and account management, and how to build relationships with clients. I of course learned a lot about what our clients did at that time. Um, and so I did research, which is sort of like the matchmaking job at GLG for a
Mhm.
year. I did sales for a little while. I traveled regularly to the Middle East because we were managing the Middle East clients out of London, and so I got to travel with the guy who had kind of built that business and learned a lot. Going and meeting with clients in the Gulf is very different than traveling with the U.S. Department of Defense to Iraq, which is what I had been doing.
Wow.
And just kind of fell in love. And I then moved back to New York, and then spent the next 11 years there, doing a few different roles. One, overseeing our legal, economic, and regulatory affairs practice, which kind of was the closest thing to what I'm now doing at BCA. We were connecting our mostly investor clients with former heads of state, ambassadors, and economists. Um, and then I ran our North American financial services client service team. It was like our biggest business unit at GLG. We turned it around and led it to 3 years of consecutive double-digit growth, and then launched and ran our content business at GLG, which has also been very helpful at
Mhm.
BCA. Essentially, all of those experts that we have, we host them for events at GLG. We would interview them and create transcripts out of those interviews, and we created a content library that we would sell access to our clients. And with the advent of AI, that content business and the power that it represented became more and more strategically important at GLG. So, could spend hours talking about each of those things, but all in all, just kind of came at the business from so many different angles. Was very, very fortunate to have incredible mentors while I was there, including the founding CEO of GLG, who I remain very close with, and um, just learned so much.
Wow. I love the story, which I mean, clearly looked like a very, very exciting period of your life that you learn a lot. Also moving between locations, that's always fun. But then once you were settled, you decide to leave, and yeah, you come to BCA. So that happened in late 2023. At the time, a firm that had nearly 75 years of history. So huge opportunity, but obviously a lot of responsibility. Why did you change? What drew you to BCA, and what felt compelling enough about the opportunity to take it on?
So, I was not one of those people who early in my career was like, I'm going to be a CEO. It felt like quite a bit of a reach for most of my career. And it's funny because the founding CEO of GLG always was telling me, you should do this, you should do this, but I didn't even take it seriously. And we kind of joke about that now. But what I did was essentially in, I think, 2022, I'd been working with a coach, this wonderful woman, Donna Conforti. I recommend her to anyone who is trying to grow as an executive. She helped me from the very beginning of my journey as an executive, like very tactically in my roles. And so I hired her personally to just help me figure out what I wanted to do with my career. And in the course of those discussions, I sort of realized, wow, I do want to be a CEO. And I kind of like admitted it to myself for the first time. And so I then launched, a search and started networking like crazy, talking to other CEOs, talking to private equity firms, talking to recruiters. And eventually I got a call from a friend who was working at a recruiting firm who had worked for me. And he told me about this opportunity. And given, it had a mix of things. They were looking for somebody who understood financial services,
Mhm.
who had worked with private equity, who had done a turnaround, and who, I don't know if they were looking for this, but what became clear, I think that was helpful was like, they wanted somebody who appreciated macro and who came from sort of an adjacent world, but wasn't like a macro person themselves, wasn't like a market strategist themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think that's worked out really well. I mean, one of the things that I think BCA really needs is not more macro expertise, because we have a lot of that. We needed uh, a leader to chart the next phase of growth. And I mean, maybe that sounds self-serving, but I do think that's true. And so that it's been a really good fit. I don't get involved with the strategists and their market commentary. I mean, I have my own geopolitical um, that I love that area. That's a topic that I'm most comfortable with. So I talk to a few of them, kind of off on the side about that. But in general, I'm certainly not forecasting, where markets are going. And so it works very well. We have more than enough expertise on that front. And then of course I work with the strategists and our sales team and all of our business leadership about, the vision for BCA and all the different ways that we're gonna grow the company.
So I'm curious to hear about that because you said, yeah, you have enough macro expertise in the house, but how do you think about evolving a firm like BCA, which obviously has been around for ages? I don't think there's many independent research houses which have been around for so long. So how do you think about making the company grow and bring it to the next level without losing, I guess, what made it special in the first place, which I guess is all this macro expertise. So what are you focusing on and where do you see the low-hanging fruits for the upcoming years? Hey there, quick ad break. Do you work in the finance industry and have a genuinely interesting story to share? I'm always on the hunt for great guests who bring raw, unfiltered insights to the table. Or maybe you know someone with a story worth telling? Please put us in touch. You can reach out to me directly via LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And now, back to the show.
No, it's a great question. And you framed it perfectly, which is how do you grow it without losing the magic? And we do have that magic. And the way that I have come to understand the magic and the way that I talk about it is, even though again I didn't grow up consuming macro research. As I mentioned, I did grow up as a news junkie, and you can tell uh, a publication, whether it's a newspaper or a magazine, any publication, you can tell when it has the magic and when it doesn't. And it's like that innate feeling that you have as a reader. You can't read one article necessarily, but if you're reading it, if you're regularly consuming something, you can just feel when the words are like jumping off the page and when the editorial choices being made are exciting and thought provoking and contrarian versus something being kind of stale, and you can just feel like they're checking a
Mhm.
box or going through the motions. And ultimately, that comes down to leadership, right? Leadership sets the tone. Leadership makes the hiring choices. Leadership chooses the people who are making and overseeing those editorial choices. So I'm not the editor of BCA. We have an incredible co-heads of research. Peter Berezin is the head for editorial, and Gary Evans is our head of what we call research solutions. We work closely on the product. But at the end of the day, what I say is, you guys keep the magic. You guys have been at the institution for a long time. You know what good looks like, but that magic is critical. And so we're getting better at kind of defining how we create that magic. But that is a really, really important thing that we have to maintain. In terms of how do we grow the company, well, number one, we have to maintain that magic. But there are so many different things we can do in order to grow. As I mentioned, although BCA has these incredible insights and strategists, it had not necessarily modernized, over the course of the last 20 years in a lot of ways that other, operating companies have. So a lot of what I'm doing is trying to bring the rigor, the operations, the commercial orientation that I learned at GLG, and bringing it to BCA. So, for example, unsexy but really important business principles like making sure incentives are aligned,
Mhm.
making sure that account management and client lifecycle management is done well, setting a culture of client obsession, making sure that we're always delivering for clients, making sure that the products that are succeeding have the resources they need in order to thrive. Bringing AI to BCA, both in our operations to enable efficiency, but also we have an AI chatbot
Mhm.
that we've rolled out to clients. modernizing the website. So a lot of what we've done so far is, this is relatively basic blocking and tackling. It's hard work, but it's not revolutionary. Just to start to drive that growth. And we've also brought in fresh talent, that brings in fresh perspective, both on the strategist side as well as on the executive team. So that has launched it's a really great growth trajectory that we're on. There's going to be even more exciting things that we do, over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. We're going to take some bigger swings, and I expect that growth to accelerate from there.
We want some spoilers. Give us a little bit. Give us a little bit of the secret stuff. Nah, I'm kidding. But yeah, like we're gonna be bouncing back on the AI part because I'm fascinated by that topic and I want to hear how it's impacting you guys. But before that, you talked about leadership. And well, first of all, for those of you that don't know, Eric is super active on social media, on LinkedIn, and he's been sharing a lot of very high quality posts about his journey and more recently about his role as CEO and some thoughts and things like that. And you recently wrote about this internal debate that you have at BCA and the value of intellectual sparring, which I guess is not always easy to manage from a leadership position. So, how do you lead teams where strong opinions are encouraged, but where you still want somehow people to stay aligned and move forward, even when people are not agreeing with each other?
Yeah, and so that's actually a really critical component of BCA's DNA is this independence, and so that means a couple of things for BCA. Number one, it means we don't trade, we don't run money, and so we're not biased in that way. Sometimes clients will say, "Well, you guys don't have skin in the game," but there are trade-offs there. Um, in terms of if you are trading, that can make you stick to a view perhaps longer than you ought to. So that's why we've chosen not to go down that pathway. But we are independent in another way, which is we don't force our strategists to adhere to a house view. So
Hmm.
we have a BCA view. So every month, Peter chairs a meeting of all the strategists, and they debate what the BCA view ought to be, and they vote on it. And then we actually show where the strategists stand on all the different major views, like U.S. equities, bonds, et cetera. You can see on our website we have a page that we show our clients where each strategist where they stand and why on each of those topics. But that's very different than how other shops operate, where typically there's a house view, the most senior strategist sets that view, and everyone cannot deviate from it. And because we take independence so seriously, we do allow our strategists to deviate from whatever the BCA view is or from whatever Peter thinks. And we think that's a really important part of our value proposition. We sort of believe that let the truth guide you wherever you go, and I love that personally because that's always been my ethos. It's something that really like connects me deeply to BCA. I feel like we all or I can really connect with the strategists and the intellectual culture that we've set. Now the question you asked was, how do you like operate in an environment where you're sort of encouraging people to disagree? And I think, at least from a business perspective, it is true that you can't have everyone running in different directions. You have to set a North Star, which we have. You have to be clear about the mission. And the way that I operate is I encourage debate. I want people to disagree with me, but at the end of the day, we make a decision, and like the price of it of the debate, of like being able to have that debate, is that when the debate is settled and I make a decision, we move forward.
Hmm.
And I think my everything about my experience tells me that people are generally pretty comfortable with that. Everyone wants to be led in an organization. If you're in an organization where the leader is not being clear about where they want to go, or not decisive, or not making decisions, it's quite frustrating, and that can lead to a lot of challenges. So I think most people are actually really motivated to know that they can get their voice heard. They can kind of like speak their truth, and then they'll go where the leader says we should go. If they feel like the leader's acting in good faith and has really listened to them and is then transparent about why they're making their decision, understanding the trade offs. So that's the mindset that I operate with.
What you're saying reminds me something. I'm gonna explain it wrong, of course, because I don't remember exactly the concept, but I think Jeff Bezos wrote about this on one of his books of how they operate at Amazon, where he encouraged like people to, have blunt conversations and disagree with each other, but then once a decision is taken on which direction to follow, everyone is supposed to go in that direction, even if they don't agree with it necessarily. But then what makes the company very exceptional in some ways is that people can leave their ego aside and everyone is rowing in the same direction. It reminded me a bit about what you were saying just now.
Yeah, there's this like aphorism that the only thing worse than a bad decision is no decision, which I don't think that's true. I actually think like some bad decisions can be really bad, but there's some truth to it in the sense that if there are no decisions, as I mentioned, it can lead an organization to become very dissatisfied and demotivating. And so, yeah, again, I think if you kind of get the balance right, that's the best culture you can
Mhm.
try to create.
And from what I heard that you just said before, then what really makes BCA different, apart of course this culture of debate, is also the fact that you guys are not trading, you have no prop book, and you're kind of independent. You don't have the pressure to stick to a call just because you have a position on it or things like that. Would that be it?
Yeah, we have something that we call the BCA way, and it is our secret sauce for how we are the like kind of the guiding principles that we follow to create our research and part of our culture. I won't go through all of the, 7 or 8 different principles. You can find them on our
Mhm.
website. We are very proud of them and they're authentic. Um, but I would say the two I would cite is that independence is very important. We're data obsessed, we're macro obsessed, we specialize, et cetera. But the other one I would cite is that we're really collaborative, and we think that because we're the biggest and because we cover every asset class, every geography, what you notice is the strategists. Well, two things. One, we have a daily call that we actually televise to our clients called BCA Live and Unfiltered.
Yep.
It's literally our daily meeting where the strategists are debating the issues of the day. And we are transparent about it. And we have hundreds of clients who tune in every day to understand what's going on in the market. It's a really great tutorial. But even offline, strategists are constantly talking to each other, debating. We have a very spirited email debate every day among the strategists about different topics. And that debate, I think, over time, makes people stronger and fresher. They're constantly challenging each other and learning from each other, and the sum is greater than the parts there. And so I think that's absolutely part of our differentiation.
Mhm. I wanted to ask you also about conviction because you said in the past that VC's goal is to help clients invest with more conviction. So could you maybe walk us through what does conviction really mean in the way BCA is serving its clients?
So a part of the BCA ethos is to shape your conviction. That's what we try to do for our clients. And so um, our strategists who are our analysts, I know I keep using that word, I should explain what they do. We have a head of global investment strategy, Peter Berezin. We have a head of European investment strategy, Matu Savary, head of China, Jing Sima, et cetera. And then, of course, we cover asset classes like bonds, private markets, et cetera. And they are trained to speak to speak and write both concisely but authoritatively. So they take a view. Inevitably, one is going to be wrong when one is
Mhm.
taking views over time. You're not going to be right all of the time, but we like to say that we're right more often than we're wrong, and we've been right on some pretty big calls. And again, you can go to the website and see some of the areas where we've been really remarkably right on some really big calls over the course of the last 10, 15, 20 years. Now, again, um, I don't want to oversell it because it's important to be intellectually honest here. Our head of research solutions, Gary Evans, also posts every month our BCA hits and misses.
Mhm.
So we take accountability for where we've been right and where we've been wrong. But at the end of the day, we try to put ourselves in the seat of our clients who are making calls themselves. And we speak with conviction and we say, this is our view. and we speak it clearly. And should be in the executive summary at the top of every report we write. Should be stated in every client meeting, and that's a core part of our ethos. There shouldn't be any waffling.
Love it. Now, I want to maybe change the angle now and look a little bit uh, to the future, because you've made the case publicly that macro matters now more than ever, or at least more than in the last few decades, because of geopolitics, fiscal volatility, and a dissolving unipolar world. So, why do you think investors are coming back to macro, and what do you think is different about this moment?
I mean, I think, we're sitting here in June. The number of macro shocks in the last 6 months has perhaps been unprecedented. But even before that, one way of understanding the growing demand for macro is the following. So, for listeners, there's something called the VIX, the volatility index, that a lot of investors follow, and it's essentially a proxy for volatility in financial markets. And as one would expect, whenever there's a macro shock, the VIX soars, and the threshold for sort of the VIX being high that we've chosen is 20. Okay, if the VIX ends above 20, that means there's been quite a bit of volatility. And when you look
Hmm.
between the period from 2015 to 2020, the number of days that the VIX ended above 20 is about 158. The number of days that the VIX finished above 20 between January of 2020 and 2025 is over 500. And that's because of COVID. That's because of the Russia-Ukraine war. That's because of the economic uncertainty that was occurring during that time. And since, just last year, of course, because of trade wars, because of Iran, because of all the macro uncertainty that any listener would be aware of, the VIX continues to be quite high. And so when those macro shocks happen, investors and professionals of all stripes are trying to understand these very, very complex topics and what
Hmm.
they mean either for their portfolios or for their business. And so we've seen a real spike in demand for our services, our insights, and I don't know anyone who thinks that the demand is going to recede in the course of the future. We think those macro shocks are only more and more likely to accelerate. And some of the reasons for that, by the way, are structural. Whereas we used to have a world of unipolarity, where the United States was sort of the unchallenged hegemon for pretty much since the end of World War II. Um, that is no longer the case, and you have the rise of China, you have the rise of Russia, and other global powers. And it's now have a multipolar world where there are
Hmm.
various spheres of influence, and therefore the potential for volatility, geopolitical shocks is much higher. It's a much less stable world. And that's one of the factors that is contributing to this, drive or increase rather in volatility and need for macro understanding.
And that volatility, of course, is also partially due to politics, I'd argue. Um, and I wanted to ask you something about that, because after the most recent U.S. elections, you described that you had a deluge of inbound requests from investors trying to make sense of the whole macro fallout. What kind of questions are clients asking the most during these high stress moments, and how does that shape how you guys respond?
I think so. We have an incredible head of U.S. politics and geopolitics, Matt Gherkin. He's our strategist, and we also have another strategist, Marco Papich, who wrote a book, Geopolitical Alpha, and is absolutely brilliant on these topics. So we're very fortunate to have these in-house experts on U.S. and international politics. Um, After the last election, I would say if I could describe like the one thing that clients were trying to understand was, Donald Trump is a very different kind of leader. There were sort of traditional Republicans for at least, since World War II. And one could even argue that there was relatively little difference between Democrats and Republicans, that there was sort of an establishment approach to politics that Donald Trump has disrupted. And so I think what a lot of clients were trying to understand was, if Donald Trump represents this disruption, and his first term was staffed with establishment figures, whereas this new term obviously has been staffed by a very different group of characters, what does that mean? What is
Hmm.
what is a disruption to American politics going to mean? There was this conflict, I think, between, and we've seen this play out, Donald Trump's views on trade and the perception that a traditional Republican will unleash animal spirits and decrease regulation, and the latter is, good for the macroeconomy. The former, trade wars and tariffs, are not, and so a lot of clients were also trying to understand how that was likely to play out. And Matt and Marco have been very spot on in both predicting the fact that those tariffs would have a significant impact, negative impact on the global economy, but then also seeing that once they sort of started and Trump backed off, that the impact of those tariffs would recede. And so that was the kind of primary underlying structural questions I think a lot of clients were trying to understand.
Wow, fantastic. And yeah, I can only imagine how hectic it must have been during this past few months for you. I mean, I can say that as a fixed income advisor, I've been incredibly busy with all the moves we've had in credit and rates. So if you guys are covering that plus all the other asset classes, is it must have been rather hectic at the office. Now I want to talk to you about a topic very close to my heart. We have to talk about AI. Um, so you've laid out two stark paths for research firms in the AI era in the past. Either you partner with third party LLM platforms and risk losing control, or you build your internal tools and sacrifice reach. Um, from what I understand, you chose the latter. So I wanted to ask you, what was the core principle behind that decision? Hey there, quick ad break. Do you work in the finance industry and have a genuinely interesting story to share? I'm always on the hunt for great guests who bring raw, unfiltered insights to the table. Or maybe you know someone with a story worth telling? Please put us in touch. You can reach out to me directly via LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And now, back to the show.
I would still, it's kind of evolving in real time, right? I mean, one of the things about AI is it's moving so quickly. I know that's like trite, but it's true. And so we're all learning in real time. And I don't consider any decision that I've made with respect to how we're approaching AI to be final. Could change. I was just in Montreal yesterday, where BCA is headquartered, and learned of this function on ChatGPT where you can now, with subscription, a paid subscription, create your own GPT. Like, it's
Mhm.
like my GPT, and have it learn how you write, how you think. You can guide it. You can upload documents that you've written, so it can actually absorb that, and then you ask it questions, and it will respond or write documents in your own language, which has been the thing that I was expecting, of course, to come, but I didn't know it was available yet. So, it's just changing so fast, and that's going to be super helpful tool for us in terms of the decision that you mentioned. So I think a lot of firms like ours are facing this decision, right? If you have a lot of history and a lot of data and content and a rich heritage that you think is really valuable IP, essentially,
Mhm.
do you make that IP available to a third party, with the understanding that it's going to broaden your reach? Or do you keep it in-house and build your own LLM and make that available to your clients? Or allow clients to access it through an API, and then they can layer in an LLM on the back end, and you sort of commercialize that and formalize that. And because we've been around for 76 years, and because we have so much proprietary data and insight, our IP is just so valuable. And we think that in 5 or 10 years it will be even more valuable, right? It will only do as we can leverage it more and more effectively through AI, it will
Mhm.
just become that much more valuable. And so for that reason, I'm trying to be cautious, and the idea of making it available to a third party, and therefore allowing that third party to have a lot of control over how it surfaces to its users, it doesn't feel like the right decision. And so we're keeping it in house. We're building in house. Again, not to suggest that couldn't change some point in the future, but that's the view that we're taking at the moment. And again, I think we're just scratching the surface of the value that we're getting out of our own data and that our clients are getting out of our own data. And I think that's going to dramatically change, probably relatively soon.
Yeah. And time will say whether it was the good decision or not. I have the feeling there's no right or wrong answer with these kind of things. I'm seeing lots of companies trying to go fast and use the available options out there, others trying to develop solutions in house. Each of the options has pros and cons. But yeah, I'm excited to see where we are all standing in a few years. Regarding the GPTs, yeah, they're absolutely amazing. I mean, honestly, I have GPTs for everything in my life, including for this podcast. You know, like I use them to prepare my episode notes, my questions, my descriptions, the thumbnails. I mean, you name it. It's and
I
this
mean,
is only the
honestly, then
beginning.
if I can disclose to our listeners, you sent me like a prep note, and I kind of could tell that, just the format that at least AI had helped, and it was excellent. Like the questions you were asking were so they reflected such a deep understanding of me and my background, and they were such excellent questions. I'm not just blowing smoke, and so it's incredible. I think one of the things that AI is already so dramatically helping is the manner in which we communicate with other like potential clients or colleagues because what you sent me was a version of like an outreach note that we might send a client. So what we do a lot of at BCA is say, hey, user of BCA services, one of our strategists is going to be in Sao Paulo on Tuesday. Here's his view. Would you like a meeting? And the world we're going to be able to move to, or we've already moved to, is hey, user in Sao Paulo, we know that your portfolio is composed in this way. We know your investment strategy looks like this. And the views of our strategists have changed in these ways that are going to directly impact how you might think about your portfolio or might challenge how you're thinking about X, Y, or Z. Do you want to take a meeting? And that's a much richer form of outreach, right? It's much more personalized. It actually meets the user, hopefully the human, where they are, and helps them to understand how you can help them, which is a profound change. And so I'm excited about AI's ability to do that.
100%. I mean, the magic word there, you said it, is personalization. I feel like users don't mind knowing that you've been using AI as long as you're really delivering value, you know? And for me, that's the beauty of AI, that we're gonna be able to hyper personalize content across the board, no matter the industry you're in, ranging from finance, but also to education, medicine, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I can't wait to be there. It's going to be amazing. So I have the $1 million question that all the employees of BCA probably want to hear about. You've said in the past that AI won't replace researchers because the topics that BCA tackles are too opaque and nuanced. um, what do you think the human edge still is in macro research, and how do you preserve it as AI tools advance?
Yeah, so I wrote an article on this, I think end of last year, maybe earlier this year, and my thesis is the following: like, I think that AI is clearly going to be answering questions, be more capable of answering questions that we as human beings ask. Um, so if you think about it, the bar for what constitutes needing to speak to another human is going to go up.
Right.
Meaning you're going to be able to put into ChatGPT or into Perplexity questions that previously you may have asked an expert or paid for someone to give you an answer. So what does that look like? To make it real for pretty much everyone out there, how many of us have entered, symptoms, hopefully mild ones that we may have been feeling into an AI and gotten back like pretty good answer, right? Like you might have X, Y, or Z going on. Hey, my elbow is hurting in these ways. You put it into ChatGPT and it's like you probably just sprained your elbow. You're playing
Yeah.
tennis. You're going to be okay. Um, Now, if you have more serious symptoms, right? If you've been feeling sick and had the flu for over a week, you might put it into AI, but at that point, you're going to want to talk to a human being,
Yeah.
and you're going to want to talk to a doctor, a medical professional, and so you're going to seek that person out. And the reason why is because the medical situation that you're dealing with has become more complex, and the consequences of what you're feeling have become bigger, right? Like may have a serious issue. And so you're likely at that point to still want to talk to a doctor or a medical professional who themselves will be enabled by AI, but will not be
Mm.
replaced by AI. And I think that's a decent analog for how I think about what BCA does. Our clients are investors who are managing their portfolios, or corporates who are, managing big businesses, and the decisions that they're making are both complex and consequential, just like a health related decision. And so for that reason, I could see them over time perhaps using ChatGPT for basic questions and perhaps even more complex questions than they otherwise would have. But at the end of the day, for decisions like that, they are going to want to talk to a human who is themselves enabled by AI. Humans have the pattern recognition, the judgment, the emotional awareness, to be able to connect with that other human and help them in a meaningful way with those complex consequential decisions. And so I don't see that changing anytime in the future. However, just to be clear, we're not we're not betting all the marbles on that. We want to challenge our own thinking, and so I've created a red team at BCA to actually come together and think through, if you guys, your mandate is, how would you disrupt AI, BCA with AI? So we want to make sure we're thinking about that, at the same time, and not, believing our Kool Aid, and believing aware, trying to be aware of what might be out there, that will allow us to make sure that we're just using AI more effectively, and delivering better, solutions to our clients.
That's super cool. So there is a team in BCA internally whose task is exclusively to think about that. Like, okay, if AI were to disrupt the way we work and the way our clients consume research 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, how do we prepare for that? How do we become part of that change? And what do we do about it today? Is that it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, in some ways, we're quite well positioned given the kinds of thinkers that we have about BCA who are so contrarian, and who have a track record of thinking differently. So I thought, what better way to utilize them than to form a red team? They've just started their work, but we're excited to see what they're able to produce.
Oh gosh, I'm super interested. Please share the findings if you can. Sounds like
Yeah,
a
perhaps we will
super
share,
cool job.
on social media what our findings are. I mean, as you know, I like to be very transparent and that's part of BCA's ethos. So perhaps we'll share some of those findings once we have them.
And how did you call it? Red team?
Yeah, there's this concept. It might come from my time at the Pentagon. There's this concept of a red team, which is essentially in military planning. You form a team internally to think through, okay, if we're going to have, an attack plan of some kind, how would it fail? How would, the other side try to defeat us? And so while you pursue a course of action, you at the same time set up a team to think through how would that course of action be opposed or defeated or undermined.
Mm. Wow. That's a cool term. I'm gonna propose that at my job also. Let's do a red team to see if we're all gonna lose our job to AI or not.
I
Um,
mean, I hope the government is doing those red teams right now. That would be quite useful.
I'm quite an optimist, honestly, about this whole thing. I like to look at it glass half full. I think obviously there's gonna be a complete disruption of the industry, but for those that are proactive, take time to educate themselves, learn, and don't remain oblivious to the whole thing. There's definitely going to be a space in tomorrow's industry, and we're all going to be productive and probably doing a lot more things than what we're doing today. So, yeah, I'm really excited. Honestly, I think it's fantastic. Plus, you get to play around with a lot of tools that take a very creative side of you that you wouldn't have been able to exploit otherwise because you remove so many technical barriers. I mean, for anything really, for doing a podcast, for doing a movie, for writing, for, I mean, you name it. So, sky's the limit really, and yeah, I think it's going to be an incredibly interesting couple of decades ahead. I'm really looking forward for that.
I agree. I mean, I have to admit, seeing that my GPT function in real time was almost as momentous as seeing ChatGPT itself for the first time. Like, I sort of knew this was coming. I have been excited about it, but actually seeing the GPT be able to, like, essentially absorb you as a person and how you think and how you write, and then hear your direction to it on how to be you, and then produce copy that sounds and thinks like
Mm.
you. It's pretty amazing.
It's absolutely insane. Crazy times and super exciting. So we're getting close to the end of the conversation. I just want to ask you a couple of last questions, maybe a bit more philosophical, maybe going back to you. Um, you recently became a life member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a long way from being the grandson of, I believe, a New York City taxi driver. Um, so what did that moment mean to you personally? And yeah, tell us a bit about that.
It was pretty cool, I have to admit. When I think when I graduated from college, I applied to be a research assistant at the Council on Foreign Relations, and I remember telling my mom about it when I was, again, 21 years old, and she was like, "The Council on Foreign Relations, like, you're gonna be a research assistant there?" Like, it kinda blew her mind, and mine too, and I didn't get the job. To go from that, to now being a life member, I never would have predicted it. Um, it's very cool. I think I don't wanna overplay the degree to which I grew up in humble origins, but, my grandpa was a New York City taxi driver, and just that journey, when you take a step back, you get a little bit later in life, you go, wow, this is pretty amazing. So being in the room, with other incredible members of the Council on Foreign Relations, every time I go there, I meet just incredibly accomplished people. Uh, Being able to learn from them, and also like speak my from my experience, and speak my mind, it's a real privilege. And I do, organizations like Council on Foreign Relations have to some extent come under attack in the last few years. And I say that as part of the broader, institutions that are somewhat thought, and understandably in the broad sense, somewhat derisively among. But like I do think that they play an important role, and can be a real force for good and change. And so that, I don't know. Those are a few thoughts about it.
Wow. Well, congratulations about that. I'm sure your whole family is very proud of that accomplishment. Well done. And a question on literature, because you said you've read everything from Andrew Sullivan, everything he's written for the last 25 years, and that Jonathan Franzen is your favorite modern novelist. What is it about those writers that resonates with you?
So Andrew Sullivan, I have read. I think probably every word he's written in the last 25 years. He's a controversial character. He has always he's very earnest, and he always says what he thinks, and he's a very, very, I think, well-intentioned, really thoughtful, absolutely brilliant person. And I like that. He's somebody who, is among the people, who most contributed to, getting gay marriage to be something that was once thought of as impossible, and actually getting it passed. And I think that's an incredible accomplishment. He's also leans conservative. He's very independent minded. I often disagree with him, but I always think that his perspectives are valuable and well thought through. And so I appreciate his willingness to deviate from his tribe, in terms of like intellectual tribe. He's never been a partisan person. He's always sort of willing to think outside the box, and so I've always appreciated that. And Jonathan Franzen, I think just his writing style has just always resonated with me. I think he's brilliant. It's like, as soon as he writes a book, it's one of those books where as soon as I get it, I just cannot put it down. I'll just consume it over the course of a few days, and it speaks to me. So yeah, it's always fun, I think, to have writers that, like, when they write something for whatever reason, it just dives into your brain. I always like that feeling, and so I've always been drawn to those two.
It's funny because whilst you were talking about those two writers, I had the feeling you were talking about BCA. Not scared of speaking their mind out, and then Page Turner. Once you start reading it, you cannot stop it.
Well,
Um,
it's what's made it such a great fit. Again, I think, like, I'm so proud of the work that BCA does, And I feel so energized by being around such brilliant people who are willing to think outside the box. It's just made it a really great fit,
Mhm.
and why I'm so thrilled to be there.
It was meant to be, Eric. It was meant to be. Last question. What advice would you give to someone early in their career who want to make a meaningful impact and contribution in the finance industry, be it through a research house, a bank, an asset manager? What would you tell them?
Think it's maybe a little cliche, but just be a sponge, be somewhere where you feel like you're surrounded by smart people where you're learning. Um, don't be overly focused on the status or the pedigree or how your LinkedIn profile looks. Think, a lot of high achievers, myself included, early in your career, you're very preoccupied with your resume and, am I going to get to X, Y, or Z? When really you should just be focused on, am I challenged? Am I learning? Do I respect the people who are, mentoring me? Over time you should ask yourself, do I actually want to become these, the people who are senior in my organization? You don't necessarily early in your career need to be convinced that you want to become them, but that is something that you should ask yourself over time. But it's just about learning and growth, and respect, and try to be low ego. Even me early in my career, I tend to think of myself now as being relatively low ego. I think I had a bigger ego earlier in my career than I maybe thought. I wish I could go back in time and tell younger Eric, take the feedback. It's okay. You're going to be okay. Those that constructive feedback early in your career can go down. Not that smooth. Got easier as I got more habituated to it.
Well, those are very wise last words. Look to the management around you, stay humble, receive feedback, and stay curious and keep learning. I love all of those. Those all are music to my ears. Eric, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. It's been incredibly interesting. I'm very excited to see how BCA evolves over the coming years, the changes that you're going to bring on board, particularly on the AI front. I'll be, of course, looking at all of that very closely. You have a big fan of your research, so keep up the good work. And yeah, hopefully BCA makes it for another 75 years of macro research excellence.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ignacio. A really, really great conversation. You're so thoughtful in your research and the questions you ask, and honestly, it's been an honor to be on the show.
Thank you so much, and take care.
Thanks. Cheers.
The Blunt Dollar is written, produced, hosted, and edited by me, Ignacio Ramirez. Everything you hear, concept, script, sound design, and production, comes straight from my desk, and occasionally my kitchen table. Thank you so much for listening, and join me in the next episode of The Blunt Dollar for more raw, honest finance conversations.